So Berkeley's not quite done talking about extension, but he wants to take this little detour through time and motion to talk about those. And these are other things that we might think are actually out there in the world. So time, Berkeley says, we measure only relative to the succession of our ideas. So basically, how we know time is passing is, well, I'm thinking new things since an event started, right? So you've started to think some new things since this video started 30 seconds ago. That's how you know, for example, that some time is passing, he says. This might be questionable, but something you can discuss in the forums, of course. And we know that motion is happening because we can see change over time, right? If there were no time, there would be no motion. Something would just sort of change position, and I don't even know how we'd be able to tell, right? It's hard to conceive of a world, a universe without time. So, to measure motion, especially to measure speed, right, we need to know how much time something has taken up as it moved. But we know that time depends on our minds, right? Berkeley thinks he's just shown that. And so motion must depend on our minds too. And he says something might look faster or slower to a different perceiver, right? So in the same way that my 8-inch envelope might look bigger or smaller to a mite as opposed to me, well, he's going to say similarly, something might look really fast to one kind of creature, maybe a creature that only lives a very short period of time, might look really slow to a different kind of creature, or even just to different people. And he wants to come back to extension. He wants to say, well, look, even if you don't buy my examples for motion and time, all of those primary qualities depend on extension, right? They depend on things taking up space, things having some shape, right? You can't measure motion, for example, if there's something that doesn't have a shape, right? Try to think about it. Can you picture just motion without picturing something actually moving? No. Right? There's no such thing as sort of abstract motion. We don't have abstract ideas of things like motion or of solidity either. When you want to picture something moving, you always picture something moving. If you want to imagine some solid thing, you need to think of something, some example of a thing that's actually solid. So if extension is all in our heads, then everything else must be too. At this point, Hylas is going to object. He's going to say, wait, I think I gave you too much earlier on. Hylas gave pretty early on to Philinus, and remember, Philinus is sort of the voice of Berkeley here, that what we perceive from an object must sort of be whatever is actually in the object itself. And he says, wait, that can't be right. I think I gave you too much, because this is getting crazy, right? You're going to say there's no such thing as actual shape, there's no such thing as actual motion. This is absurd. Maybe I gave this to you too fast. So there must be some difference between what we perceive from an object and the actual object. Berkeley responds like this. He says, think of a tulip. This is sort of like the apple example we used earlier. When you experience a tulip, what do you see? Well, you see shapes and colors and textures and size, maybe motion, right, if it's blowing in the wind. But do you see an actual object there, or do you just see all of these qualities that it has? Berkeley says you don't see any underlying object, right? If you take away all the sensible qualities, there's nothing left as tulipness, right? There's no sort of intrinsic tulip object out there in the world. There's just all of this stuff that we can see about it. This might seem crazy, right? And Hylas still thinks this is crazy. You probably share his intuition here. There must be, we think, some actual tulip out there in the world, right? Not just the tulip's shape, the tulip's size, the tulip's color, right? We think that these things all belong to the tulip. Berkeley's going to say this isn't actually true. So he wants to talk about what it would take for that to be true, and then he wants to show why it can't be. So there's a sense in philosophy of a thing called substance, and specifically material substance. And Locke, in some philosophy that we didn't read, argues very strongly for the existence of substance. So what would there need to be in the tulip for there to be like sort of a central tulip separate from all its qualities? Well, that's what substance would be. Substance would be an underlying thing that all of the qualities inhere in. It's whatever has all of these qualities. So the substance of the tulip is whatever actually is, say, yellow, whatever is sweet-smelling, whatever is blowing in the wind. But Berkeley's going to say, where does that idea come from? You can't possibly have gotten an idea of substance by seeing it, by hearing it, by smelling it, by tasting it, by touching it, right? Because that would be a sensible thing then, right? And we know that substance is what the sensible things are in. So is there any reason to think that substance must exist? Well, we certainly don't have any reason from our senses. Hylas thinks there must be, because it would be what holds things together, but we'll see that Berkeley thinks he can do it differently. That'll be the next video.